find a comfortable place where you can settle the back of your head on the floor. And maybe just then feel your breath come in, feel your breath leave you. You don't need to do an exaggerated breath here, but just have a moment where you take your attention to your breathing and you feel an inhalation move through you, you feel an exhalation leave you. And then if your legs are long, bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor. And you're going to start to let your knees tilt to the right and to the left. That's it. So you're just rocking your knees from side to side. And again, you keep this within a comfortable range of movement. So it could be a big movement or it could be a small movement. You don't have to do a big movement. It might be that a little rocking of the knees from side to side is what your body needs now. That's nice. And just noticing, how does this feel around the back of your pelvis? Do you feel anything into your lower back? Do you feel anything into your hip, around the hip joints and sort of the front of the pelvis? So once, twice more to each side. And we're going to then do a movement for the upper body. So if you're more comfortable lengthening your legs out on the floor, you could do that, or you could keep your knees bent. So it's very much up to you, because what I'd like us to do now, we're going to try not to move the pelvis and the legs. So you're going to take your arms up over your chest and you're going to interlink your fingers and you're going to make a sort of big circle with your arms. So if you imagined you were holding a beach ball, a beach ball on your chest. And then you're going to start to rock from side to side across your upper back. So you keep trying to keep your circle circular and you're rocking your arms a little bit over to the right. That's it, and a little bit over to the left. But if you go a long way with this, your circle is no longer going to be circular. So, you know, if you, just sort of notice what happens as you rock from side to side with your arms. So keep the hands immediately above your chest. So imagine you're holding a big ball on your chest and you're trying to rock from side to side, holding this ball. That's it, good. Good, and just do this a couple more times. And as you're rocking your arms from side to side, also let your head go with them. So the head is moving in the same direction as the arms. So we've got this rocking movement across the upper back, good. And then pause in the center, unlink your fingers, bring your arms to rest down on the ground beside you, and just let your arms be heavy. And again, feel a breath come in, feel a breath leave you. So for a moment, you bring your attention to your breathing. And if your legs are long, then bend your knees and stand your feet on the floor. And start to, once more, let your knees tilt to the right and to the left. And see how this feels. Good. That's very nice. So rocking side to side across the back of your pelvis, letting the knees tilt to the right, letting the knees tilt to the left. That's nice. And just seeing, maybe after moving the upper body, does it feel a bit easier doing this movement? Doesn't necessarily mean you go further. It might just feel, easier. Okay, we're going to do another movement for the upper body now. So again, if you prefer, lengthen your legs out or keep your knees bent and your feet standing on the floor. So again, you're going to take your arms up towards the ceiling over your chest. This time you're going to touch your hands together in prayer pose. So you're making a triangle with your arms. So if you straighten your elbows, Alison, so point your fingers up towards the ceiling. That's it. Stick your hands together. So that's it. Plant your hands together. You want to imagine your hands are stuck together. Your elbows stay comfortably straight. You've made a triangle and you're now going to rock this triangle to the right and to the left. So just like we did with the circle, let your arms rock to the right. That's it. Good. To the left. Let your head move with your arms, but don't let your hands slide and don't let one elbow bend. Yeah. Good. So again, what we're feeling is that we're rocking side to side across our upper back. And, you know, sometimes I can do this and I really feel quite a lot of tension and discomfort in my upper back. And I feel it's giving me a bit of a massage there. It's getting into some of those tight places. So try and find a sort of rhythmic movement, rocking to the right and rocking to the left. Good. Just for a couple more times. And then whenever your arms start to get tired, release the arms, let them come to rest on the ground again. Good. So let the arms rest. And once more, come to feeling your breath in your body. So feeling a breath come in, feeling a breath leaving you. Lovely. And then one last time, bending your knees, standing your feet on the floor. And coming back to letting your knees tilt to the right and to the left. Good. And just do that a couple of times. Again, just to have this sense of, does this feel a bit easier? Good. And then just pause for a moment in the center. And you're going to cross your arms over your chest. So you want to have one arm on top of the other. That's it. So one elbow on top of the other. And now come to rock so that you're letting your knees, your elbows and your head all rock one way and then all rock the other way. So we're starting to rock now a bit more sort of side to side across the back of our body. Very nice. And so you can, again, this can be a small movement, this can be a larger movement. What's most important is it stays comfortable. And you're doing something that hopefully feels enjoyable, feels comfortable for your body right now. That's it. Emma, your knees, I can't actually quite see because it's a bit dark if your knees are going in the same direction as your elbows and your head. What I'd like you to do from here is let yourself rock all the way onto one side and have a few breaths on your side. And you don't have to keep sort of your arms like they're hugging you. Just have your arms however's comfortable. You know, if you want to put one arm under your head, you could do like bend your elbow, put one hand to support your head. You could do that. And just, yes, have a few breaths on your side and contemplate the prospect that from there, we're going to be coming over onto hands and knees. And we're going to do a few things for hands and knees. So yeah, as well as contemplating the prospect, eventually you could bring yourself over onto hands and knees. Just let yourself settle on hands and knees. And I think before we do anything else here, what I'm going to get you to do, just one hand at a time, is to come onto the back of your hand. Yeah. So you could have most of your weight, if I turn around this way, you could have most of your weight through the hand that's got the palm on the floor, but just see how it feels for your wrist to turn your hand under. So you come onto the back of your hand, but don't necessarily put a huge amount of weight through that. So do that on both sides and then come back onto hands and knees. And just let yourself settle on hands and knees. And we're going to come to some cat movements. So when you're ready, come to rounding your back to the ceiling and dipping your spine down to the floor. And just see how these movements feel today. So how does it feel to let your spine dip down to the floor, let your belly soften and relax? How does it feel to round your back to the ceiling, let your head hang, let your abdominals draw back towards your spine? And just keep moving between the two, noticing how it feels. And you don't need to do anything particular with your breathing. You could notice when you're breathing in, and you could notice when you're breathing out, whether your breathing is sort of naturally coordinating with the movement in some way. It doesn't matter whether it is or it isn't, but it could be interesting to notice. Does it help to breathe in or out when you do each of the movements? Now let's just, because I want us to do a little bit more on hands and knees. So let's just for a moment sit back over our heels. And if it's not good to come into kneeling, just be up and give your hands a bit of a shake out. I hope you can see me okay. It's just sometimes the light's not great at night time. And we're going to make cat into a little bit of a sequence where we rock back. So come back onto hands and knees, and you can do this with me. So we're going to be rounding our back to the ceiling, staying rounded and rocking our hips back over my heels. I have my feet flat on the floor, but you could tuck your toes under if you prefer. And then coming forwards, dipping the spine down a bit. So rounding up, staying rounded to rock back. So look back towards your feet. And then come forwards, dipping your spine down. So you're actually sort of looking forwards as you travel forwards. Not too much, you don't want to crick your neck. So rounding your back, rocking your hips back over your heels, and then dipping your spine down to come forwards. And just do this a few more times, rounding up, staying rounded to rock back, so you're looking back. And then as you come forwards, let your gaze travel forwards along the floor as you do. Okay, so maybe 2 more times, rounding up, rocking back, dipping down. And this last time, let's do it once more. This last time as we come forwards, dipping down, you might find that it's a bit easier to do that as you breathe out. So you could try that, dipping down on an exhalation. And then the next time you round your back to the ceiling, I'd just like you to rock all the way back into child pose. And have a few breaths in child pose, settling your elbows onto the ground. And you can, maybe your forehead touches the ground, maybe your head hangs, or you can rest one hand on top of the other and rest your forehead on the back of your hands. And just whatever's comfortable, have a couple of quiet breaths in child pose. So in child pose, again, this feet sort of gather your attention in and feel the movement of your in and your out breath in your body. The sort of how does the breath feel? Where do you feel the breath? Gather in. So we've got that feeling of really we settle and we gather our attention into our breathing. Good. So maybe one more cycle of breath, feeling your breath come in, feeling your breath leaving you. And then we're going to come back onto hands and knees, and we're going to move up through a dog pose and a forward bend into standing. We're going to do a few things in standing, and then we're going to do a little bit more dog. So we'll come back to a bit more dog and a bit more hands and knees. So a few more hands and knees things. So if you come back onto hands and knees, and if we're coming into dog, it's quite nice to have the hands quite wide apart. And really big handprints on the floor, and tuck your toes under. And as you exhale, you're going to rock your hips back over your heels, pick your knees up off the floor, and see how it feels to lengthen your legs out in dog pose. And so it could feel quite tight through the back of your legs. So you could be bending one knee at a time. So a bit of the sort of feeling of walking on the spot. Bending one knee, bending the other. You might see how it feels to bend both knees together. Send your hips back as much as possible. Rest down through your arms and hands. Big exhalation or two. I always really find it helpful in dog to be having these big breaths so I breathe out through my mouth and just really try to soften and release tension. And then in a moment, we'll be coming on into a forward bend. So you're going to be walking your hands now in towards your feet until all of your weight is in your feet. And you could just be letting your arms hang, or you could be, if it's better for your lower back, you could be bending your knees a bit and resting your elbows on your thighs. Probably whatever you do, it's probably good to have the knees a bit bent. And try to let your head hang. And just be as soft and relaxed and floppy in the shoulders as possible. And then as we exhale, you're going to sink into your heels and roll up into standing. Very nice, looks great. So, yes, let's first of all in standing, just do this sort of loose swinging twist. So we can swing our arms, let your feet move on the floor. So we're trying to feel the whole of our body is moving in this. We're not leaving anything behind. Good. And you can slap your arms onto your body if, like me, you're thinking, okay, It's getting a bit lighter in the evenings, but it's still, might be feeling a bit tired. You can slap your arms on your body to wake yourself up a little bit. Very nice. Couple more times. I was just thinking there's going to come a point when on Thursday evening it's going to be light, and I can't quite believe we'll be coming round to that before too long. Good. So a couple more times and then we'll let this go. And we're going to focus on doing a few balancing things. Again, I think to just sort of keep us feeling reasonably alert in standing. So the first thing I'd like you to do is settle down with your feet a little distance apart. And then we're going to do the one where we rock our weight forwards onto the balls of both feet. Yeah. And then we come down again. We just do this a few times. Try and keep your arms heavy and relaxed by your sides. And just see how it feels to shift your weight forwards and then come back down again. We'll do that a couple more times and then we'll stay up. Good. So you can, maybe the next time you come into this one, bring your weight forwards onto the balls of your feet. That's nice. And then we can float our arms up. Keep your shoulders soft and relaxed. Good. And then see how it is to have a few breaths here. So you're just trying to allow your breath to flow in and out as naturally as possible, letting the shoulders drop down away from the ears, keeping quiet through the front of your body. Just everything here is nice and relaxed. Good. Oh, I'm about to fall out. When you come down from this, you're going to come all the way into a forward bend. So you're going to let your heels come down. I like to take my arms out to the side and then sweep my arms down and around into a forward bend. You, of course, can bend your knees as much as you like. Often in a forward bend, it's quite nice to have a big exhalation to help you feel floppy and relaxed, but also very rooted down through your heels. And then to come back out of the forward bend, we can let a breath come in and we can exhale to roll back up and out. Good. And we're going to do the same balance again, but this time, I think most of you know this one. We're going to take our hands into this mudra, Hakini mudra, where we touch all the thumbs and fingers together. So we'll come up into the balance. We'll then touch our hands over our head. You can't quite see my hands like this. And then we'll bring our hands down in front of our chest. But we'll come into the balance first. So this mudra, this hand position, it's very much about concentration. And I find it really helpful in balances. It sort of also gives us something else to think about apart from our wobbly feet. So same thing, you're going to bring your weight forwards onto the balls of your feet. You're going to steady yourself there. You can let your arms float up, maybe as you exhale. And then you're going to do that interesting movement where we're touching our fingers and thumbs together over our head. We can't see them. And we've got to find, that's it, we've got to find the matching thumb and finger for each pair. Good. We let the shoulders soften. We have a breath or two here. And then slowly you let your hands come down in front of your chest. And I like to take my elbows out to the side in this one. You don't have to. You can take your elbows down. So I've got my hands in front of my chest. Try to keep my elbows soft and relaxed. And then just having a few more breaths here. Good. Very nice. And just see, we're doing really well. So certainly I'm finding that having this hand position makes the whole balancing aspect a little bit easier. And yeah, come down and have a little shake out. And sometimes I just don't know whether that's, we're giving ourselves something else to focus on, or yeah, all these sort of concentrating qualities of the movement. Now, settle back down, both feet on the floor. You're going to bring your hands into prayer pose in front of your chest. So let a breath come in, and as you exhale, you're going to take your arms down and then up. You're going to let a breath come in here, and then we're going to swing our arms and cross them in front of our body. So you can cross one arm in front of the other, and then the other arm in the front. But eventually what I'd like you to do is swing your arms so that you're giving yourself a hug with your right arm on top. So it's a bit like what we were doing, if I come forward, it's a bit like what we're doing on our backs. And I'm asking you to have your right arm on top because then you're not going to have to worry about remembering which arm is on top when we come to do side two. So from here, you're going to come on into your eagle arms where, you see, I think you all know this one, where we bring our hands like this, and then we touch, that's it, good. We touch the palms together, good. And I'd like you then to step your feet a little bit wider apart. We're going to take this into a forward bend. And I find it's always helpful to have the feet a bit wider. And I also quite like to bend the knees with this one. So sinking into the heels, folding forwards, letting your arms release forwards. And at this point, if you want to uncross your arms and just let your arms flop down to the floor, you can do, that's absolutely fine. Or you can keep your arms still in that eagle arms position. Lovely. Now, before you roll up into standing, it's probably quite good to release your arms and just let them be floppy. And then as you exhale, sink into your heels, roll up into standing. And when you arrive back in standing, keep your feet this little distance apart. And we're then going to do some of these side lengthening movements. So we take one arm up, sort of reach up and over. The other arm is floppy and relaxed. And I'm shifting, you don't have to do this, but I'm shifting my pelvis towards my raised arm side. And I find that gives me a bit more length through the side of the body. So I would, you know, again, you can stay in this and breathe, or you can move from side to side. So you've got a bit of a choice here. But make sure you do both sides. Yeah, so going, yes, if you haven't swapped sides, do. And now this is the point at which you'll be very pleased I told you which arm to have on top for eagle arms, because you don't have to remember now for the other side. So just give your legs a little shake out. And then come back to standing with your feet a smaller distance apart, and bring your hands back into prayer pose in front of your chest. So Alison, you look like you'd bring your feet slightly closer together again. So I try not to say hip width apart, but that's the sort of distance we're thinking about to start with. Let a breath come in. As you exhale, take your arms down and then up. Let your shoulders drop away from your ears. Let a breath come in. And then as you exhale, swing your arms, cross them in front of your chest. And really try at this point, that's it, to let the arms feel that it's just sort of hanging quite loosely from the shoulders. And from here, you're going to swing your arms and give yourself a hug with your left arm on top. Okay? And then from here, you're carrying on into your eagle arms, yeah, and your left arms on top this time. Good. And then just like we did on the other side, we'll be taking our feet a bit wider and then folding into our forward bend. And again, I think it's quite nice to bend the knees. You don't have to. So as you exhale, folding forwards, staying really rooted into your heels, but feeling that those sort of linked arms give you a bit of extra weight to help lengthen your spine out. And at any point, you can release your arms to the ground. Let your head go. Quite important. So again, before you come up into standing, release your arms and roll up on an out breath, just keeping your arms sort of heavy and floppy, sinking into your heels. And as we'll revisit these side lengthening movements one more time. And again, if you moved from side to side last time, you could try staying and breathing. Remember the bottom arm, you're trying to keep that bottom arm really relaxed. Yes, and if you stayed and breathed last time, you could move from side to side. So try to give away the bottom arm. And you can see, how does it feel to take your pelvis, from side to side? And how does it feel not to take your pelvis from side to side? Good. So we'll eventually balance ourselves out here. So when you feel you've done enough of this, or you've balanced yourself out, so I can sort of carry on doing this one, then just have a little bit of a shake out. And we're going to do another standing balance. This is going to be one where we come onto one foot. So I think what we'll do is decide which, you're all going to choose which foot you'd like to stand on first, the easier foot. So settle your feet down a little distance apart, and then close your eyes and do a little bit of swaying from side to side. So imagine you were going to take your weight onto one foot. Well, actually, don't imagine, do it. Let your weight rock onto one leg and foot, and then the other. So you're not picking a foot off the floor yet. You're just, how does it feel as you go from side to side? Is there a side that feels a bit easier? You feel a bit more drawn to standing on? And we're going to obviously start with that easier side. So you've got an option. So maybe I'm just going to very quickly show you what we're going to do. We're going to do these 3 little balances. We're going to be sliding our foot back behind us. And then from there, bringing our foot to tree pose. And from there, bending our standing knee and crossing the top leg over. Now, you could have your hands in prayer pose for the whole thing. You could bring your hands into prayer pose at the end. Or at the end, you could take your arms up. So, just decide at the beginning if it's helpful for you to sort of have your hands out of the way in prayer pose, if it helps you balance, and that could be helpful. So the first thing you're going to do is shift your weight onto your standing foot and come up onto the ball of the other foot, and then slide that foot back behind you. And you're going to flip onto the top of your toes. And a couple of things you could do here. You could try, first of all, just sort of bouncing your toes on the floor. Can you do that? Can you sort of pick the toes up and put them back down again? And what about if you would try to straighten that back leg a little bit more? And sometimes it makes my foot cramp, so you might not do too much of that. Good. And then from there, you're going to slide that foot back in under your pelvis. And you're going to turn your knee out to the side. And you're going to bring your foot onto your ankles. So you're coming into a little mini tree pose. You could have some toes on the floor if you feel a bit unsteady. And it might be at this point that coming into hands into prayer pose is helpful. Just have a couple of breaths here. Good. And then from here, bring your toes back onto the floor again and bend your standing knee a little. And then we're going to cross. And at this point, sometimes it's good to look down at the floor slightly more, a couple of meters ahead, and then cross your raised leg over your bent standing leg. This one, good. Lovely, very nice. And if at this point you felt that you then wanted to take your arms up towards the ceiling, you could do it. You might be feeling a bit too wobbly by this time. But well done, very nice. Good. And then come down, give everything a bit of a shake out. Okay, so we're going to do exactly the same thing on the other side. See how foot number 2 feels. So again, you can start with your hands in prayer pose, or you can add them in once we're in tree, or the last one, eagle. So shift your weight into your other foot and start by sliding your toes back behind you. So that's the foot you were just standing on. Flip onto the top of your toes and then maybe bounce your toes on the floor. What's it like to pick those toes up and down? Then what's it like to straighten that back leg? Can you keep quiet through the front of your body? Then let that foot slide back in under your pelvis. Let your knee turn out to the side a little. Bring your foot onto your ankle, into this little mini tree pose, hands in prayer pose. That's it. Anjali Mudra. Good. Breath or 2 here. And then bring your toes to the floor again. Bend your standing knee, and then we're going to cross that top leg over. Good. You could have your big toe on the floor if you feel unsteady. That's fine. And if you do feel steady and want to take your arms up, dropping your shoulders down, staying quiet through the front of your body, dropping your tailbone down. Very nice. Lovely. Okay. Well done. Come down. Have a little shake out. So we're going to now be making our way out of standing and coming back to some dog pose things. So come towards the back of your mat. And let me just check. Oh yes, okay, I'm just checking. So we're doing a couple of different things in dog pose. I was just checking how we're getting to these 2 dogs. So come to the back of your mat and touch your hands together in prayer pose. So we'll move into a forward bend, a bit like we do in sun salutes. So you could start here. Maybe just take a moment before we move to close your eyes, feel your feet on the floor, feel the contact of your hands, and feel a cycle of breath move through you. Feel a breath come in, feel a breath leave. And then open your eyes, and as you exhale, take your arms down and then up. Drop your shoulders away from your ears, and then start to sort of curl forwards, gathering your elbows in down towards your knees, and then releasing your arms down towards the floor. And from here, you're then going to walk your feet into dog pose. And just arrive in your, walk your hands into dog pose. What am I talking about? Walk your hands forwards into dog. When you've arrived in dog pose, we're going to do a little bit of work on our feet. So what I'd like you to do, 1 foot at a time, is come right up onto the ball of your foot, the underside of the toes, then roll onto the tip of your toes, and then roll right onto the top of your toes. So just 1 foot at a time. And I think you all know this one. If you're not sure, look at me. So come really bend your toes, come onto the underside of the toes, the ball of your foot, the tip of your toes, and then roll right over onto the top of your toes. And go from side to side a few times doing this in dog pose. So we roll right through the top of the toes. Good. That's it. Very nice. And then when you've had enough in dog pose, I'd like you to walk your hands back into your feet. So you come back into a forward bend. So all of your weight, walk all the way back. So all of your weight's in your feet. And even if your hands touch the floor, you could pick them up off the floor. And what we can start to do here, make sure your feet are a little distance apart and your feet are parallel. We're going to start to bend your knees forwards over your feet. So we come down through a squat. And it's fine if your heels come up. Okay. And in fact, yes, if you have a cushion or a book, you could put that under your heels for the squat. But in fact, what we're going to do from here is let ourselves roll forward. So from our squat, we actually want to let our heels roll up, come up, so we can roll forwards onto hands and knees again. And we're going to come back up into dog pose here, and we're going to, if you're not sure, watch me, we're going to do some one-legged dogs. So these ones where we can take our leg up, one leg up, and we can move it around, bent and straight. So we're going to come back into dog and do some of those one-legged dog poses. So from hands and knees, hands nice and wide apart again, tucking your toes under, rocking your hips back and up into dog pose. So obviously, if we're going to take one leg off the ground in dog, we need our hands to be really planted. So you can take 1 foot up, you can see how does it feel to lengthen that leg back behind you. You could try with your pelvis level, and you can try sort of rolling your raised leg hip towards the ceiling. And you can try bending that raised knee as well. And none of these one-leg dogs are ones to stay in for a long time. So you're probably ready to swap sides and try the same thing on the other side. So lengthen your leg out behind you, roll your raised leg hip towards the ceiling, bend that top knee. See how it feels, and you can do a bit more if you like. But also whenever you've had enough, you're going to fold down into child pose and have a couple of quiet breaths. Good. Very nice. So child pose, or if you're happier in kneeling, kneeling is always another option. Just letting yourself quieten and come back to feeling the movement of your breath in your body. So in child pose or in kneeling if you prefer, gathering your attention into your breathing. So feeling the in-breath, feeling your out-breath, noticing where in your body you can feel the movement of your breathing, noticing how it feels as the breath comes in and as the breath leaves you. Good. Now I think you're all in child pose, which is great. And what I'd like you to do from child pose is to slide your hands forwards a little bit so that your elbows come off the floor and you're planting your hands on the floor. And then keep your hands there and come up onto hands and knees. So this should mean that you've come into a longer hands and knees. So like me, your hands are not underneath your shoulders, they're a bit further forwards. And I'd like you to just start doing a little bit, you're not necessarily going that far, a little bit of what's it like to rock your weight forwards, to let the pelvis rock forwards, to take a bit more of your weight through your arms. And you want to have your hands, make sure your hands are shoulder width apart now, because as you come forwards, you want to feel that your shoulders come over your hands. Good. And you're not necessarily going all the way into face up dog, but you're sort of headed in that direction. And then we're going to do a couple of other things and come back to this and see how it feels. So from hands and knees, you're going to step 1 foot forwards between your hands and tuck the toes under in your back leg and walk the back leg back a bit. So we're coming into a lunge here. So we're thinking again now about sort of opening up a bit through the front of the body, particularly the front of the back leg thigh. So we can probably all feel that. So we want to check that in our front leg, we've got our knee over our heel. We've got our foot really well planted on the ground. You can have your back toes tucked under or flat, whichever feels more comfortable. This is a good place to be having some big exhalations because we're trying to give the weight of the pelvis to the ground. We're feeling all that sort of tightness through the front of the thigh, maybe the front of the groin. And I'd like us to go a little bit further from this lunge. I'd like us to take it into a twist. So you're going to keep your opposite hand on the floor. So it's a little distance between your hand and foot. So it's like your missing foot. And then the same hand as your front foot is going to come onto your pelvis. And you're turning a little bit towards your front leg. And you could then make sure your back toes tucked under. And if you wanted to go a bit further, you'll send your back heel away from you and let your back knee come off the ground. And we're still turning towards our front leg. And we could then reach forwards with our arm. So we've got this long diagonal line from our back heel to our front fingertips. And we're having a few breaths here, and this can feel a little strenuous, but thought you might enjoy it. So a couple of breaths, 2 or 3 breaths in this lunge twist. And then we can slowly make our way down, let that back knee come down. Untuck your back toe, and you're going to ease back out of your lunge. So you keep your chest close to your front thigh, and you look back behind you. And just, ease back a bit. But it can feel a bit of a stretch through that front leg thigh. Good. And then we will come to the other side of lunge. So I'm just turning around so I won't turn away from you in my twist. So bring your other foot forwards into lunge between your hands. And again, if you need to, tuck your back toe under, sort of step your back foot back. And then just check how planted you are through your front foot. So that front heel is under your knee. You're feeling nice and supported through a well-planted foot. We can have a few breaths here. And then just like we did on the other side, your opposite hand, so opposite hand to foot is going to plant on the floor. And you can lean down through that arm. And the other hand comes onto the back of your pelvis. So we're turning our ribs and our shoulders towards our front leg. You could at this point then tuck your toes under, send your back heel away, let your back knee come off the ground. So it's quite a big stretch through that back leg. And we can then reach forwards with our top arm. So we want to feel this long diagonal from our fingertips to our back heel. We're trying to breathe here and stay turned towards the front leg. Sometimes we lose that turn. If we're looking down at the ground, we've lost our turn. Good. Untwisting, letting the back knee come down, untucking the toes, easing back. into this eased back out of lunge movement, which doesn't really have a name. Good. Very nice. So I think what might be quite nice to do just before we do come back to a bit more face-up dog is do another dog pose. So you could sit back over your heels for a moment, give your hands a little bit of a shake out, and then come to just a very nice quiet dog pose. So we're not really doing anything fancy here. I mean, if the impulse takes you to do something fancy, you can do. But otherwise, just see how does it feel to come into a quiet dog pose, where you could perhaps settle and feel the movement of your breath somewhere in your body. And feel your body responding to the flow of the breath. So sometimes as we exhale, we can sort of settle and release a little bit more into a movement or a posture. Sometimes as we breathe in, we sort of expand a bit and we perhaps come away from the movement. Again, very nice, lovely dog poses. Whenever you come down, you might just sit back in kneeling for a moment and give your hands a little bit of a shake out. You don't have to, if sitting down and kneeling is not comfy, you can always be in this sort of up kneeling, which is absolutely fine. So I thought we would move in a moment towards face-up dog by doing our sort of tail wagging movements. But I just wanted you to do a bit of tail wagging on hands and knees. So this side-to-side movement of our pelvis, which can be so helpful. So we can do this tail wagging by imagining we have a tail and wagging or swishing it. But we could also do this movement by swinging our lower legs from side to side. So you can try either of those options. Just to find this feeling. And obviously when we come to moving into face-up dog, we're not going to be swinging our legs from side to side. So it's probably helpful to find this side-to-side movement of the pelvis with the legs staying still. And then to come to face-up dog, we're going to move between child pose and face-up dog. Just bring your hands a little bit further forward. So we come back into this long hands and knees position. And what you could do to start with is swinging your pelvis from side to side, moving back towards child. So this sort of snaky movement. And then swinging your pelvis side to side, moving forwards towards face-up dog, which to me always feels like I'm sneaking into it a little bit. So side to side, pelvis, and then again sort of snaking forwards, side to side, snaking back. Just, maybe in your own time, 3 times into face-up dog, and then ending up back in child pose. Perhaps if the 3rd time you come into face-up dog might be a time to sort of stay there for an extra breath or 2. And then good. Couple of breaths. Very nice. Couple of breaths in child pose. Beautiful. That looks really nice, Alison. Lovely. So from child, yes, do give yourself a couple of breaths in child. From child, we're going to be moving on, and I'm just a bit over ambitious about what I thought we might get through this evening. We're going to do a little sitting sequence for hips. Emma, I don't know how your hip is. And let's see how we get on. So what I was going to get you to start with, which we'd often do, is to start with your legs long and wide. And if this is not particularly easy for you, do lean back on your arms. So this can be so good for knees. I know with my, this sort of sitting with legs long, you don't have to go massively wide. But I know if ever, you know, my knees are feeling twingy, this can be so helpful for them. So we'll just have another breath or so here. From leaning back, you could see how does it feel to walk your hands in a little bit. I know some of you, yeah, Beata, I can see you look very happy. Some of you are very happy leaning forwards. What you just, with this one, if you are thinking about leaning forwards, you need to feel that your pelvis is moving forwards. So it's not that you're sort of, your pelvis is rolling back and you're sort of pulling your upper body forwards, because that's just not going to be great for your back. Now, from here, maybe lean back on your hands again, because what I'd like you to do is to try to bring your legs into cobbler pose without using your hands. So you're going to be sliding one foot in, and then that's it, the other foot in. So we come into cobbler pose. That's it. And then in cobbler pose, maybe hold onto your feet or your ankles and come to a little bit of rocking from side to side. Good. So this is one that definitely benefits from, if we've got any extra padding on our bottoms from all these lockdowns, it's much more comfortable. So rocking from side to side. And then we're going from here, we're going to move on into pinwheel and then on into pigeon. So really coming to work into our hips a little bit. So from cobbler pose, let one knee come on top of the other knee and slide this top leg back. So we're in pinwheel. So this great position where we've got one knee coming to the center, one knee going out to the side. We can do a little bit of circling here. So it could be a little circle. Or if you like to really sort of get into moving around, low circling, you can do that. And yes, let me see. We will come into our pinwheel forward bend for a couple of breaths. So this is where you turn towards the knee that's going out to the side. And then we just fold down over that leg. And this is a really nice place just to settle. And again, sort of bring your attention to your breathing. And see if you can, yeah, that sort of feeling of just gathering your attention in, feeling the movement of your breath through your body. Now, I always find the pinwheel forward bend makes me sort of quite relaxed and dreamy. So before I drift off somewhere, we can walk our hands in and we can then come on into pigeon. So to move from here to pigeon, we let this knee that we were bending over move back a little bit. So at this point, I'm thinking my leg is sort of lined up with the long edge of my mat. So it's sort of coming straight out, really. And then if you take your weight a bit over that bent leg, we can then lengthen the other leg out behind us and maybe even tuck our toes under and walk it away a little bit. And it's up to you here. If this knee, if you've got any issues with this knee, keep your weight sort of offside over the bent leg. If that knee's fine, you can roll your pelvis so it's a bit more centered. Yeah. And be in pigeon. And just sort of see how it feels for a few breaths. So when we're in pigeon, this is a really good, again, it's another place where I would always just really try to focus on my exhalation, to use the out breath to help release tightness. It's going to be in that bent leg buttock. Yeah, that's where we're really stretching out. And also when you exhale, try to keep your shoulders soft and relaxed. Now, you might be quite happy just having another few breaths in pigeon. If you're not, you come out, obviously. If you want a little variation, you can do a little twist in pigeon. And this would be if you're comfortable walking your hands in a bit. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. You just keep turning. So one hand stays in the center and you reach back with the other hand. You could do this bending your back knee and touching your foot. That's an option. You don't have to do that. If that's uncomfortable, keep your back leg long and just sort of touch onto your back. See if you can touch your back thigh. Good, that's nice. And obviously don't do this if it's, you know, if it's not comfortable, aggravating, then don't do it. Okay. Let's roll out of pigeon. lean back onto your arms, come back to your legs being long and wide. Good. Yeah, again, just see how that feels. So remember, you can be leaning back on your arms. If you're someone who likes to and finds it quite easy to fold forwards a bit, you can be doing that. But maybe we won't stay here too long this time, maybe after the second side of pigeon. So again, from here, you could lean back onto your hands, and without using your hands, then bring your feet into cobbler pose. And this time in cobbler pose, we could do these sort of side lengthening ones. So that's it. One hand stays on the floor. We sort of lean from side to side. That's nice. Good. So we're trying to stay quite heavy below the waist here. Good. Very nice. Okay. And then let's go on into side 2 of pinwheels. So we're going to go the other way this time. So let your knee come on top of the other knee. Let your top leg slide back. Come to a little bit of circling here. Good. So if for some reason you think you're doing the same side you did last time, then swap over. Something's got a bit wrong, which it could do. Otherwise, a bit of circling, of course, you can go, yes, if you like to sweep around and go low, you can do that. And then like we did on the other side, we'll come into that lovely pinwheel forward bend where we turn towards this knee that's going out to the side, and we just fold down over it, and we have a few quiet breaths. So this opportunity to gather our attention into our breathing, to let our body settle and make our breath our sort of primary focus here. You can stay there for another breath or two if you like, or you can walk your hands in and start to think about moving on into pigeons. So again, as I usually say at this point, I try and bring this knee back a little bit more. So it's sort of going straight forwards. And then if you let your weight come over that bent leg, then it's a bit easier to maybe lengthen out the back leg, perhaps even tuck the toes under and reach that back leg behind you. Again, remember, you can protect this knee by keeping your weight over your bent leg. If that knee's fine, we can let the pelvis come a bit more centered. And if you want to sort of feel, you can always bring a hand onto the back of your pelvis and you're trying to feel, is the pelvis level? Yeah, that's something probably we're all experts at now, a year into Zoom classes. And then just settle into pigeon for a few breaths. You could be on your forearms, your elbows. We'll do the twist in a moment. You could go a bit lower. You could rest your forehead on the back of your hands. Just see if you can find a place where you can be in pigeon and have a few breaths. And again, that feeling of exhaling and settling into the pose, releasing that tension through the buttocks. And then again, if you want to, like we did on the other side, if you enjoyed doing that little twist, you would come onto your hands. And so what I always do is I just keep bringing one hand into the center in front of me. And I reach back with the other hand. And just, you're quite a relaxed way. You're just sort of seeing, if I turn a bit and reach back, where can I touch my hand? And if you quite like pigeon and this is all quite easy for you, you could bend your back knee and be touching your foot. But if you do that and that suddenly really makes it quite uncomfortable, then it's perhaps not, what you should be doing. Good. That's it, lovely. Okay, and then finally, let's release pigeon, roll out, lengthen our legs out here. So you've got a couple of choices now because, so someone like you, Beata, who looks quite, that you rather like this, you might want to stay here. But I was also thinking you might like to, we're going to be coming onto our backs, and you might like to do this one lying on your back. So obviously you would be taking your legs up and you would be, catching onto your legs somehow. You could even be supporting your legs like this with your elbows on the floor. Some of you might need to hold your big toes. So yeah, just sort of choose whether you'd like to carry on in sitting or whether you'd like to come and try this. So it is quite nice to have your elbows on the floor and sort of rest your legs in there. You could also, if you do this one and you think, well, I'm not quite sure about my legs being wide, I want to do some other things, you could take your legs up to the ceiling, closer together, give them a shake out. You can also bend your knees into your chest. And of course, we can do our favourite Thursday evening happy baby in a moment. So you can bend your knees into your chest, do a little bit of rocking from side to side across the back of your body. So that's very nice. And then of course, we can take this into happy baby where we keep our knees bent, take the knees wider, and then we just take the soles of the feet towards the ceiling. So the feet are, the legs are wide, but the knees are bent. Maybe, yes, exactly. Maybe we can hold our big toes or ankles. And can we maybe here rock from side to side across our back? So you could sort of rock using momentum from side to side, or you could be reaching up through one heel and then the other. Yeah, you could, if you reach out to the side through your heel, you might go all the way over. So this is just really a little chance for you to have a little play around and see if you can find something that's nice. You could then, you could also revisit taking your legs wide again, wider and straighter, and see, it might feel more comfy. Yes, that's it. And whenever you've had enough of your legs being up in the air, then just take your feet down onto the floor with your knees bent, and maybe even lengthen your legs out for a moment. Good. So I think in a moment we'll just finish with a couple of very simple twisty things lying down. So if you want to put anything warmer on or put some socks on, then do that. And once we've done these couple of simple twisty things, then we'll do a little bit of quiet breathing on our backs. So if you've got a blanket, just have it to hand. Good. So I'd like you now to settle down on your backs with your knees bent and your feet standing on the floor. So coming back to really where we started, which was always quite nice, I think. And then just letting your knees tilt to the right and to the left and seeing how that's it. How does that feel? Lovely. Yeah, and just keep it really easy and relaxed. It's not the time to be pushing anything. That's very nice. Good. And then pause in the middle and take your feet a bit wider. So they're as wide as the narrow edge of your mat or thereabouts. And come back to tilting your knees from side to side with your feet wider. That's it. And see how that feels. Good. And if it's comfortable, you can take your knees all the way down on one side and have a few breaths, or take them down. If one of the knees doesn't quite reach the ground and you've got a cushion to hand, you could always slide the cushion under your knees. Might be comfortable without. Have a couple of breaths there. Maybe let your head roll in the opposite direction to your knees. If you want to take this into even more of a twist, you take your top knee and you draw it into your chest a little bit more. That's at the top knee, and support it with the opposite hand. That's it. Yeah, good. That's it. So you're still keeping that, so the shoulder of that knee is staying settled on the ground, and then you're using the opposite hand to support that knee. You almost make a little sort of shelf with your elbow on the floor and your hand is the little shelf. Good. You can have a couple of breaths there. And then come back to both feet standing on the floor, feet as wide as the narrow edge of the mat. Come back to tilting your knees and then take them down to the other side for a few breaths. Good. So yes, take your knees all the way to the other side. Let both knees drop down as much as they can towards the floor. Obviously, if one of the knees isn't going down as much as you'd like, put a cushion under it if that makes it more comfortable. And then again, if you like, you can then move on to drawing that top knee in towards your chest, supporting it with your opposite hand. That's it. Alison, will your bottom knee drop out towards the floor a little bit more? Yeah, it was the sofa in the way. It's sofa in the way. So that's it, yeah. Sometimes these things take up more space than we think. Good. That's it. So you're sort of keeping your shoulder settled on the floor and your knee is dropping down towards the other side of your body. Good. Very nice. And then from here, you're just going to come and settle yourself onto your back. And this would be the time, if you have got a blanket, to put your blanket over you. And we're just going to lie quietly for a couple of minutes, this sort of quiet breathing. At this point, I always like to rest my hands on the front of my body because that, I find that quite settling and it helps me to feel my breath in my body. You don't have to do that. If you're more comfortable with your arms down by your sides, then of course, that's fine. Just letting your breath come in, letting your breath leave you. And it can be helpful, I find, to start with this sort of actively gathering your awareness into your breath and just really being with your breath, feeling the in breath as it comes in and fills you, feeling the out breath as it empties, drifts away. And it's also from having that focus in on the breathing, it can be helpful to let your awareness become a bit more expansive, to have a sense of the whole of your body, of the points of your body in contact with the ground. To be aware of the air on your skin. And around you, sounds, light, the presence of other people in your house, in your street, your building, presence of animals. So I'm going to ring the singing bowl 3 times now. So just let yourself carry on resting until we reach the silence at the end of the 3rd sound. So thank you, everyone. Just take your time, there's no rush.